Welcome back to the program. Amy Jacobson, John Casson sitting in for Dan Proft on a very busy and solemn Monday morning. Learning this morning from the FBI, actually there were 49 victims. The 50th dead body was the gunman, Omar Mateen. And we're learning this morning and hearing from his fellow coworkers, and I want to get to our listeners as soon as possible, because currently, up until this past weekend, Omar Mateen worked as a security guard for the PGA Village Golf Club in Port St. Lucie, Florida. It was a gated community, and he worked with a man called Daniel Gilroy. And Daniel Gilroy has come forward saying that Mateen was unhinged, he was unstable. He would often talk about homophobic beliefs and about religious beliefs, and he has spoken this morning.
There was never a moment where he didn't have anger and rage, and he was always loud and cursing, and anytime either a female or a black person would come by, he would use horrible words.
So Gilroy, who's a former Fort Pierce police officer, said that he complained to management, and management did nothing because he's Muslim.
That's his characterization, but clearly this type of personality, I think our next guest will understand this as someone who is ripe to either self-radicalize and seek a higher purpose for his paranoia and anger. And I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, and real quickly, Gilroy quit after Mateen would stalk him with multiple text messages. He would text him 20 to 30 times a day, and he also called him on his cell phone 13 to 15 times a day and left messages, homophobic, anti-American messages on his voicemail.
He's blossoming, and he's waiting. All he needs is a little direction, and you can just direct him.
And with that, we go to KT McFarland. Excuse me, KT, a friend of the show, Fox News national security analyst. KT, how are you doing today?
Well, sad, and grieving like the rest of the country.
I know. So what about this Omar Mateen? Do you think he acted alone? Is he just a homophobic? Is he a terrorist wannabe? What are your sources telling you?
Well, it could be any of the above, and that's the problem, is that he has, after every one of these, Amy, we all look back and say, the warning signs were all there. We just never connected the dots. And then after an event, the predictable happens. The liberal media says, it's all because of the NRA and guns, and they won't let us have gun control. And the conservative media says, it's all because of political correctness. Frankly, guys, it's because of everything. It's all of the above. Why was a crazy guy like this, who exhibited all the warning signs, did he have a gun, a legal gun? And if he had a gun, why didn't somebody check up on him? And then the political correctness. His coworkers, his former wife, people warned, there were all the warning signs there, and yet it wasn't pursued. Why? Because of political correctness. I look at this and say, we have been at this war for 15 years, and we're losing. And we've never gotten in front of it. We've never gotten ahead of it. Bush didn't do it. Obama didn't do it. And now radical Islam has reached into the borders of over the borders of the United States, deep inside. It recruits on the Internet, and it proselytizes on the Internet, and it trains over the Internet. And we are so far behind this, and yet we're the country that invented the Internet, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that stuff, and somehow we're not the one. We're being outsmarted by a group of guys in the desert of Yemen on social media.
I know, but we're letting them still reach the Americans via Twitter and Facebook. Is anybody patrolling that on a second-by-second basis to try and stop them recruiting lone wolves?
Well, here's the thing. We have used the Internet, and we have shut down child pornography, for example.
Okay.
But what we haven't shut down is radicalized behavior. Why? Is it for political correctness? President Obama, what is his first reaction? Saying, well, we've got to, this is the whole gun control issue, and we don't want to alienate any Muslims, so we want to make sure we don't even say the word radical Islam. Or for fear that the crazy ones are going to be pushed into the edge and into the arms of ISIS. I don't know about you, but I listened to President Obama's statement, and I sure wasn't reassured that he's got this under control.
He started off, KT, I thought, with the right tone, and I thought, okay, good. And then he switches over to gun control.
He's done this 16 times, though.
And the thing is, I'm not one of these who I don't want to go to war with Islam, and I understand because there's a billion of them. We're going to kill everyone? You can't. So I understand that there are policymakers who like you, professionals who understand that if we start drumming the Islam drum, that it's counterproductive in terms of policy. But can't we have some middle ground?
I don't necessarily think it is counterproductive.
Really? Okay, tell me.
I mean, if, for example, there's an organization in Britain called Quilliam Foundation, and it's made up of and the founder was a man who had been radicalized and was part of Al-Qaeda. He was one of the big Al-Qaeda recruiters in Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And then he changed his mind, and he's now on the good guy's side. And he said, as have others, said, look, you got to separate it out from the religion. You've got to call it radical Islam. Otherwise, the rest of the Islamic faith can't attack it. We've got to attack it from within, and by the United States and others having this political correctness, never daring mention the word, it in fact hinders their efforts. I look at this and say, we've been at war for 15 years. We defeated the Nazis quicker. We really defeated the Cold War. It took a little longer for the Cold War. But this is an effort that we have to understand threatened. It's an international effort. It's a global jihad, and it threatens all of Western civilization.
All right, well, let's talk about the FBI. And, they investigated him in 2013 because he made comments to his coworkers alleging possible terrorist ties. And then in 2014, he had potential ties to the American suicide bomber in Syria. What do you know about that relationship?
Well, one of his friends was the first American who had gone to Syria to be a suicide bomber in the Middle East. All the warning signs were there.
So that was his friend?
That was his friend. It was somebody he'd been in contact with.
Well, how is he not on an FBI watch list? How is he working for a company that's owned, a UK company, a security company, that government sources and protects government buildings? How is that even possible?
Here's what my beef with this has been all along, is that from the very beginning, we wanted to be politically correct and we didn't want to single anybody out. So all of the resources we used to find terrorists, we wanted to look at everybody in America the same way. Okay. So if some grandmother on her way to Orlando with the grandkids to visit
like my
Disney
mom.
World, like your mom, okay,
she's
given
out.
the same level of scrutiny as somebody who fits this terrorist profile behavior. What we should have done from the beginning, and what we should certainly do now, although it's late in the day, is to say we have only so many resources. Let's immediately, quickly take your grandmother or your mother and put her out of the realm of people we're going to take a second look at. And then for that 1%, 5%, whatever it is, then we zero in on them and we take a close look. And if this man, for example, was looked at by the FBI and then dismissed, if we had more resources maybe devoted to that, maybe that guy would have been tracked a little better. I mean, for example, on the FBI's or on the National No-Fly List, TSA's no-fly list. If there's a terrorist like the one who was in Chicago, the one who came to Chicago, they misspelled his. They had the guy's name. They had his father who turned him in, and they had one letter that was misspelled.
Okay.
So he slipped through the net because they didn't spell the name right.
Oh my God, that is just
there was a few, I think, a year or so ago. There were reports that the Obama administration had been scrubbing or ordered scrubbing of intelligence assessments to minimize the word Muslim. I kept reading this stuff on sort of right wing.
It's true. I mean, but the administration did the same thing. They refused to let the word Islamic and extremist or terrorist be in the same sentence or even on the same page.
So how do you do as an intelligence professional, how do you do your work if that's the directive from the White House?
Well, are you a fan of Harry Potter?
No,
I was
because
a really big fan of those
Satan.
Harry Potter books because my kids were the right age.
Yes,
and there was the
too.
evil Lord Voldemort, and nobody would mention his name. And as long as they didn't mention his name, they didn't have to deal with it. But of course, it turned out Lord Voldemort was the embodiment of evil. And once somebody like Harry Potter started calling him what he was, then they were able to go after him. Islamic extremism is the same way. We don't talk about it, and therefore we don't address it as a problem. It's easy to fade in to the background. We don't really have a national effort to confront it. I mean, I think we need an effort that is not just military, but it's economic, it's ideological, it has diplomacy, it has going to our allies who are playing us both sides of the issue and saying to them, look, you're being nice to us, you say you're cooperating, but we know you're funding radical Islam.
Okay, so Omar's father, Siddiqui Mateen, he was on YouTube. He's speaking out in support of the Taliban in Afghanistan, but he also said U.S. is a friend. What do you know about him in particular? We know they were born and him and his mom.
Well, they were born and raised in Afghanistan. And when the communists came into Afghanistan, there was a diaspora. In other words, a lot of Afghans left. They left Afghanistan. They went to other countries. They went to Europe. Some came to the United States. And then after September 11th, even more Afghans left, but the bad guys left. Those are the ones who were al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and they went into Pakistan. I assume that the father was in the first wave because the son was born in the United States. He was born in Brooklyn. I mean, he's an American citizen.
And, yeah, and Dad was involved with discussions about the tribal areas.
Yeah,
of Pashtun,
again, we need to. Why are these people not popping up on somebody's, metadata analytics? I mean, you can go online, go on Amazon, and you buy a book, and then immediately you're getting the suggestion. Wouldn't you like this other book? That's based on your profile, your internet profile. Why are we not doing that for people who are maybe going to those kind of websites, becoming involved? Why are we not having a closer look at them? Certainly, Amazon knows a lot about me. Do they know a lot about terrorists?
Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen to the parents? I know they'll be interviewed by the FBI.
Well, they'll be interviewed, and then I think the next step will be, what were the other connections? Did the family have a connection? We found with San Bernardino that the net was bigger.
Speaking of San Bernardino, and this, and workplace violence in Fort Hood, right?
Or an Oklahoma beheading.
Exactly, and more. There's 12, 15.
We can't even remember them. There have been so many.
The point is, these personalities, this type of personality, seems to be the kind that's ripe to be triggered, and I would expect there'd be further attacks like this. Yes?
Oh, I was just talking to someone who said that the FBI has said that after this attack, the chatter is how they communicate with each other, sort of how measuring the intensity of the interests that the bad guys have, that it went way up after this attack. So I think that's an indication that it may not be finished.
Well, she is the best in the business. KT McFarland, Fox News national security analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, KT.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks, John.
We'll talk to you soon. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.